First at 9 this Saturday, the 13th of July 2024. On top of the world, President highlights the need to crown Anuradhapura as a world-renowned tourist hotspot. Further highlights several proposals to be discussed with UNESCO Director General. The Strait Bridge. Construction of bridge connecting Sri Lanka and India will commence as soon as possible, asserts State Minister of Foreign Affairs. Tracks underwater. Torrential rains wreak havoc island-wide. Kandy railway station submerged again. Debt restructuring and beyond. Economic experts discuss Sri Lanka's economic potential and journey post-debt restructuring.
We must go for the East Continental Terminal, the SLPA terminal. Now, we can't take 20 years to approve a terminal. We have to approve within 1 year.
Hard infrastructure is important. We need to have terminals. We need to have state-of-the-art terminals. But that alone won't work without the soft infrastructure.
If large multinationals can sort of outsource parts of their value chains, that would be the way to go.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is Ada Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Ada Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now taking you straight to your top story this evening, President Ranil Wickremesinghe stressed on the importance of building up the global profile of Anuradhapura as a world-renowned destination while revealing several development initiatives aimed at achieving that objective. The President also noted that several long-term archaeological endeavours in Anuradhapura will be discussed with the Director General of UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay, upon her arrival in Sri Lanka next week. President Wickremesinghe also pointed out that measures are underway to set up new hotels in Anuradhapura, which will further propel development efforts in the locality.
A ceremony to inaugurate the 150 kilowatt solar power system installed by LTL Holdings at the historic Jayashree Mahabodhiya premises in Anuradhapura was held under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe this morning. The initiative is aimed at achieving the government's national policy of reaching net zero carbon emissions.
We have not taken any steps to develop Anuradhapura. So I summoned officials of the Department of Archaeology along with officials supervising affairs related to the cultural triangle. At the meeting, I instructed them to initiate several development initiatives. We have entered into an agreement with the Durham University to begin excavations in the Mahaviharaya. Mahaviharaya is only one small part of Anuradhapura. There are many other projects that we need to take up. We need to conduct excavations consistently for 20 to 40 years in Anuradhapura. I will make a proposal to UNESCO's Director General to that extent. Let's work to make Anuradhapura a world-renowned destination. That is what we are trying to accomplish with these initiatives. As part of those initiatives, we are also looking at suitable land to put up hotels. With the advent of new hotels, Anuradhapura will further develop. We hope to discuss those matters with the Director General of UNESCO upon her arrival next week.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Now, State Minister of Foreign Affairs Tharaka Balasuria expressed hope that the construction of the bridge between India and Sri Lanka will commence soon and added that the island nation hopes to conclude its construction within 4 to 5 years. Speaking in an interview with WION News, the Foreign Affairs State Minister, who emphasized the need to improve connectivity with India in all forms, said Sri Lanka has so far been building walls and went on to say that the time has now come to start building bridges. He also highlighted that the bridge connecting India and Sri Lanka will help attract 2.4 million to 5 million Indian tourists to the island nation each year.
Are you also looking with India, Sri Lanka and a third country? For example, India, Japan and Sri Lanka when it comes to ports, or India, Russia and Sri Lanka when it comes to the airports?
It depends on the industry. If you look at the Mattala airport, India, Sri Lanka and Russia, from the perspective of Sri Lankans, the highest number of tourists come to Sri Lanka from India. The second highest number come from Russia. So it makes all the sense to have a tri-party agreement and to make sure that more tourists visit Sri Lanka. I think we should not just be looking at India, but also through India, we should be looking at it as a gateway to the rest of the South Asia and also to Southeast Asia.
One connectivity which is being discussed is the land connectivity between India and Sri Lanka. How is it going about and what's the view in Sri Lanka regarding it?
It's proceeding well at the highest level. I think terms of reference has been done and then also RFP has been given Sri Lankan side, and the Sri Lankan side is now we need to select a consultant in that regard. The bridge itself will, I think, take about 4 years to build, so that will be a game changer. Today in the morning the foreign ministers had a time with Prime Minister Modi ji, and one thing I again emphasized was the bridge, and one point which the Prime Minister made was that if you look at the EU and if you look at South Asia or Southeast Asia for that matter, what he pointed out was the reason that the EU succeeded is simply because of connectivity. So be it India and Sri Lanka, or be it the road network between India and Myanmar and Thailand, we need to improve connectivity in all its forms, so there'll be more business transactions taking place if there's better connectivity.
Any year you're looking at?
I hope that it can get construction on the bridge will start as soon as possible. I mean, just think in terms of tourist numbers. I believe that if you look at the internal tourists, local tourists, the Tamil Nadu gets the most number of tourists. They get about 140 million tourists. Rameshwaram alone gets 10 million tourists. Where does Sri Lanka stand in this? Sri Lanka at the moment we have got about 1.1 million tourists this year, and we are looking to get 2.4 million tourists at the end of the year. I think if we have a bridge, that 2.4 million or 5 million tourists coming from India can take place within months. We've been building walls for too long, so we need to build bridges now.
Sri Lanka plans to expand its seabed. India also plans to expand its seabed. It has put up a proposal as well. What's the update like? Is this an issue that is a thorny one between India and Sri Lanka?
No, certainly not. I think each country has a right to claim beyond the 200 nautical miles. So if there are areas of contention, those areas can be discussed and resolved bilaterally, and we plan on having discussions with India and resolving this matter amicably.
We are looking at the usage of Indian rupee. Is this also on the anvil?
Yes, from Sri Lanka's side, we become less dollar dependent. If the more Indian tourists comes to Sri Lanka, if we can pay for the Indian goods in Indian rupees, then we save a lot of money in terms of the commissions and converting our money to dollars and paying your receipts in dollars. I think it's a very good proposal, and it will be also very easy for the Indian tourists to come to Sri Lanka and pay in Indian rupees.
So is there work happening on trading in the national currencies between India and Sri Lanka?
Yes, the work is proceeding well, and I think by next year we have identified a certain number of locations that these machines can be used in order to trade.
Horizon Campus 2024 intake. Register now.
Now, the Natural Hazards Early Warning Centre of the Meteorological Department issued an amber advisory for heavy rains above 100 millimetres in parts of the country tomorrow. Meanwhile, the prevailing extreme downpours led to the inundation of the Kandy railway station yet again, massively inconveniencing the public.
Torrential downpours and strong gusty winds continue to wreak havoc in several regions island-wide. Kandy was among the most affected regions in the island, with heavy rains inundating the Kandy railway, inconveniencing many passengers. Measures were also taken by the Mahabali Authority to open 4 sluice gates of the Mahabali Development Program's Polgola Dam. Heavy rainfall which occurred in the Central Hills prompted the opening of several sluice gates of the Vimala Surendra Reservoir. Meanwhile, fairly heavy rains above 75 millimetres occurred in Colombo and other suburban areas. Issuing an amber advisory for heavy rains, the Natural Hazards Early Warning Centre of the Meteorological Department stated that heavy rains more than 100 millimetres are likely at some places in western and Suburgamum provinces and in Kandy and Norelia districts. As a result, the Met Department urged the public to take adequate precautions to minimise damages to life and property caused by strong winds and lightning. Taking the prevailing inclement weather patterns into account, the National Building Research Organisation issued Warning Level 1 Yellow Watch warnings to several areas in the Kalutara, Kandy, Kegol, Norelia and Ratnapura districts.
Political news leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, affirms that he will lead the country towards historic development while establishing a country governed by social democracy. Addressing a gathering, the opposition leader assured that the Samagi Jana Balawegaya is ready to face any challenge in their journey to develop the country.
The Kaluthara district rally of the Samagi Janabala Vegas Janapowder Rally series was held this evening at the Mathugama Public Grounds. The event was graced by leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa.
Ranil Wickremesinghe is planning to unite with the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna and become the SLPP's presidential candidate. The president visited Kaluthara last week. He participated in an event organised by Rohita Begunawardena. We are ashamed that we once supported Ranil Wickremesinghe. The Supreme Court delivered a verdict stating that the Rajapakshas are responsible for Sri Lanka's bankruptcy. In front of them, Ranil Wickremesinghe is expressing his views on how to develop this country. We should always remember that Wickremesinghe's victory is a victory for the Rajapakshas.
If the president is afraid to contest the election, he can spend his time leisurely at his place in Colombo 7. If not, he can contest with us in the election. We are ready to face any challenge. There's another jester who used to be a criminal previously. He has neither a definite plan to develop the country nor an economic vision, but blabber talk. They only know to make slanderous comments about the affluent communities in the world and scare off our investors and flourish themselves. They are a terrorist group which destroyed this country. I promise everyone that we will move the country towards an historic development era and create a country where social democracy is present. Therefore, we invite everyone to join us in this journey.
Now, leader of the National People's Power, Anurukumara Dissanayake, claims that it is now impossible to differentiate between individual political alliances since various political leaders and parliamentarians have crossed over to each other's parties in support of both President Ranil Wickremesinghe and opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. Addressing the National People's Power rally in Damulla, he further asserted that President Ranil Wickremesinghe would not be able to resort to the same divisive political tactics since the people are continuing to embrace the NPP.
The National People's Powers rally, named Together for Renaissance, was held in Damulla under the patronage of the party's leader Anurukumara Dissanayake.
A significant change is currently happening. The leader of SLPP, Mahinda Rajapaksa, and SLPP's national organizer Bashil Rajapaksa are now supporting President Ranil Wickremesinghe. SLPP's chairman Professor G.L. Pires and SLPP treasurer Dallas Alaperuma are supporting Sajith Premadasa. If you observe them in the middle, you'll find Ranil, Mahinda, Basil and Namal on one side. Meanwhile, on the other side, there's Sajith, G.L. Pires, Dallas and Dilan. Can you differentiate between the two? Which of those two camps represent the UNP? Which camp of those two represents the SLPP? What is the UNP camp between the two groups? Is it the one with President Ranil Wickremesinghe, but Mahinda Rajapaksa is also there? Then what is the SJB? Is it Sajith Premadasa's camp? However, GL Pires is also in that camp. Many citizens in rural areas divided themselves along political lines, but something different is happening now. Everyone at the top is uniting. Moreover, there's a reason to be hopeful. Everyone in the grassroots is joining hands with the National People's Power as seen in Damulla. President Wickremesinghe is currently trying to pull strings to prevent the election. A petition was filed recently regarding the election. The court fined the petitioner 100,000 rupees, ordering him not to file such frivolous petitions. That petitioner was C.D. Lenever. Now another petition has been filed. I think this time the fine should be much higher. Let's see what happens. President Ranil Wickremesinghe cannot prevent the elections by pulling strings this time. The only string that will remain with him is his tie.
Now another political news. Leader of the Maubima Janata Party and leader of the new political coalition dubbed the Sarvajana Balaya, Dilip Jayavira, revealed that his political coalition will nominate a presidential candidate once the dates of the presidential election are announced by the Election Commission. Jayavira went on to say that the Buddhist clergy is capable of supporting his political coalition by providing spiritual guidance for the public to achieve contentment.
Leaders representing the novel political coalition, Sarvajana Balaya, presented the first draft of the party's strategic plan for public discourse named A Happy Nation, an entrepreneurial state, to several high-ranking members of the Buddhist clergy, led by Chief Prelate of the Askili chapter, Most Venerable Wadakagoda Sri Nyanratana Thera, and Chief Prelate of the Malwatha chapter, Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Siddhartha Sumangala Thera.
ඔබතුමන්ලගේ සන්ධානයේ යම් කිසි ආකාරයෙන් ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂක ඉදිරිපත් වෙනවද? අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ඉදිරිපත් වෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂා දැන් මේවට තෝරලා ඉවරයි.
නෑ ඒක අනාගතයේදී තාම ජනාධිපතිවරණය කියලා නැහැනේ. ඉතින් එතකොට අපේක්ෂකෙක් නම් කරයි.
Meanwhile, Venerable Horavada Dharmarama Thera was appointed as the chief Sanganayaka of Gampa district at the Mangala Uposithagaraya of the Malwatu Viharaya. The occasion was graced by leaders of the Sarvajana Balaya political coalition.
A form of atheism with certain political nuances has been spreading rapidly during this age of social media. That version of atheism has challenged our Buddhist civility. We believe Lord Buddha's philosophy that contentment is the greatest wealth. We aim to make the general public of Sri Lanka content. The Buddhist clergy can guide us to achieve that spiritual happiness.
Star dishwasher Dali Tel Idul Pahasuwen Sede. Star dishwasher magic top එක.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Welcome back. Now, Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Dumindu Hulangamu, is of the view that Sri Lanka has potential to achieve higher levels of economic growth by developing shipping and logistics, tourism, IT and business process outsourcing sectors. He made those comments while addressing a panel discussion themed Sri Lanka's debt restructuring outcome and its impact on economic diplomacy and foreign policy, organised by the Lakshman Kadargamar Institute.
We have identified 3 sectors for growth potential. Number 1 is shipping and logistics. We still have tremendous advantage on shipping and logistics. We are very well positioned on the sea route. India will take much longer to develop their ports. Even if they do so, our ports are much more efficient. So we must go for the East Continent Terminal. We must go for the SLPA terminal. We'll have to increase our port capacity and go for the transshipment volumes of India and also other countries. So shipping and logistics to us is one key area for development. And for that, we invite international capital. We come back and forth on approvals. Now, we can't take 20 years to approve a terminal. We have to approve within 1 year. Tourism is an area that Sri Lanka has enough potential. Investment is already made, but we need to invest in infrastructure to improve tourism. We have to increase the number of flights that are coming from Europe to Sri Lanka. We need to develop the Bandaranaike airport, and we have to also diversify the product, because our tourism is just hotels, selling hotel rooms or tourism. If you go to Europe, you can see the amount of diversification they have for tourism. It's hyped up, but we need to do the same hyping in Sri Lanka as well. If you go to a site, it's not properly marked, it's not properly written, history is not known. So we need to diversify the product in order to increase the tourism income from 4/5 billion to 10 billion. The other area we see is IT BPO industry, where Sri Lanka has a lot of talent, a lot of graduates, a lot of accountants coming out. One of the countries that produce the highest number of accountants. So there's enough opportunity for BPO IT industry in Sri Lanka to operate.
At a timeline, and everybody is looking at India as a growth opportunity. The question to ask is Sri Lanka ready to embrace that opportunity? Because we always looked at India as a threat than an opportunity. So it is the private sector or the citizens have always viewed India as a threat than an opportunity. Not just India, but even the world as a threat than an opportunity. So we need to really change that attitude and actually really work hard to implement what we've already known as the policy solutions, the shipping and logistics sector. I think we have this notion that hard infrastructure alone can really develop the shipping and logistics. We want to be a logistics hub, we want to be a regional hub, but hard infrastructure is important. We need to have terminals, we need to have state-of-the-art terminals, but that alone won't work without the soft infrastructure. By soft infrastructure, I mean institutions, regulations, and technology. We have not focused so much on institutions, regulations, and technology. If you ask why, the vested interests is what is holding it back. So Sri Lankan economy really needs to recognize this problem and understand that it's a tougher problem to handle than economic reforms. It's easy to increase taxes, but it's far more difficult to tackle vested interests. So you have to be far more strategic, but to me, that is the critical thing for you to have growth-oriented reforms.
We also need more friendly trade agreements, and especially if large multinationals can sort of outsource parts of their value chains. That would be the way to go forward, because there is also talk that in Sri Lanka we generally, even when we look at our export strategy, we look on industries to export, but the world has changed. It's mostly intra-industry trade, like ASEAN countries. Within an industry, within a multinational, how they export to another part of the supply chain. So that is where we need to sort of work on.
Now in international business news, Meta has lifted the final restrictions on Donald Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts in the run-up to the US presidential elections in November. The ex-US president and convicted felon's accounts were suspended in 2021 after he praised supporters who stormed the US Capitol on the 6th of January. Trump's accounts, which combined have over 60 million followers, were reinstated in 2023 but subject to additional monitoring, which has now been removed by the social media giant, said in a blog post according to Meta. Meta said it had a responsibility to allow political expression and the Americans should be able to hear from presidential nominees on an equal basis. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.